Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. What started as a 15-year-old girl giving away her only means of mobility to help a stranger would end up changing not just two lives, but an entire community. This is the story of Maya Chen, and how one moment of pure selflessness set in motion a chain of events that nobody could have predicted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain drummed against the cracked windows of the Chen family's small apartment on Maple Street in downtown Portland. Maya Chen sat by her bedroom window, watching droplets race down the glass, while her younger brother Danny practiced violin in the living room. The familiar melody of Bach's Air on the G-string filled their modest two-bedroom home. But today, even the beautiful music couldn't lift Maya's spirits. At 15, Maya had been using a wheelchair for 3 years following a car accident that damaged her spinal cord. The silver manual wheelchair she relied on wasn't fancy. It was a basic model her mother had found at a medical supply store's clearance sale, but it had become Maya's gateway to independence. Without it, she was confined to their second-floor apartment, dependent on others for even the simplest tasks. Her mother, Linda Chen, worked double shifts at Providence Medical Center as a nursing assistant. Every morning at 5:30, Maya would hear her mother's quiet footsteps in the kitchen, preparing coffee and a simple breakfast before heading to her first shift. Linda would return home briefly at 2 in the afternoon, check on her children, help Maya with any needs, then rush off to her evening shift at a different hospital across town. She rarely returned before midnight, exhausted but determined to keep their small family afloat. Maya's father had left when she was 12, shortly before the accident. He'd claimed he couldn't handle the financial stress, but Maya suspected he simply couldn't face the possibility of having a disabled daughter. His departure had devastated Linda, who suddenly found herself not only a single mother, but also the sole provider for a family dealing with mounting medical bills and the challenges of Maya's new reality. The apartment they called home was a testament to their struggles. The carpet was worn thin in the main walkways, and the walls bore scuff marks from Maya's wheelchair. The kitchen faucet dripped constantly, a repair they couldn't afford, and the heating system worked sporadically during Portland's harsh winters. Maya had learned to sleep under 3 blankets during the coldest months, while her mother worried quietly about utility bills that seemed to grow larger each month. Despite their circumstances, Maya had found ways to contribute to their household. She'd discovered a talent for tutoring younger students online, helping them with mathematics and science through video calls. The work paid modestly, but every $20 or $30 she earned helped cover small expenses. School supplies for Danny, groceries when their food stamps ran low, or the occasional treat that brought smiles to their faces during particularly difficult weeks. Danny, now 13, had inherited their father's musical abilities but their mother's kind heart. He'd won a partial scholarship to attend Lincoln Arts Academy, where his violin skills were flourishing under professional instruction. However, the scholarship only covered tuition. The family still struggled to afford his sheet music, instrument maintenance, and the occasional competition fees that could advance his musical education. Maya watched her brother practice with a mixture of pride and concern. She knew he sometimes went without new clothes or school supplies so their mother could afford his music lessons. She'd overheard Linda on the phone with creditors, negotiating payment plans for Danny's violin repairs when the instrument had been damaged during a particularly rough winter. The wheelchair had become more than just mobility equipment for Maya. It represented her ability to help her family. With it, she could navigate their neighborhood independently, running errands for their elderly neighbors who paid her small amounts for grocery shopping or pharmacy visits. She could reach the community center where she volunteered, helping other disabled youth adapt to their circumstances. Most importantly, she could get to the library where she did her tutoring work, using their reliable internet connection when their home service was disconnected due to late payments. Maya's high school, Roosevelt High, was a 40-minute journey by city bus. The route required 2 transfers, and Maya had memorized the schedule perfectly. She knew which buses had working wheelchair lifts and which drivers were patient with the extra time needed for her to board safely. The commute was challenging, especially during Portland's rainy season, but Maya never missed school. Education represented her path to a better future, not just for herself, but for her entire family. Her grades were exceptional, particularly in mathematics and sciences. Several teachers had mentioned college scholarships, painting pictures of universities that could provide full funding for students with her academic achievements and personal story. Maya dreamed of studying biomedical engineering, hoping to develop better assistive technologies for people with disabilities. She imagined a future where she could earn enough to buy her mother a house, ensure Danny could attend the best music conservatory, and perhaps even reconnect with the father who had abandoned them. But those dreams felt distant on rainy afternoons like this one, when the wheelchair's brake was sticking again and Maya knew they couldn't afford repairs. She'd learned to fix minor issues herself, watching YouTube videos and borrowing tools from Mr. Peterson, their neighbor who worked as a handyman. Still, she worried constantly about what would happen if the wheelchair broke down completely. The Chen family's story was one of quiet resilience in the face of overwhelming challenges. They never complained publicly about their circumstances, never sought pity or charity from others. Linda had instilled in both her children the importance of dignity, hard work, and helping others whenever possible, even when you had little to give. Maya had absorbed these lessons deeply. Despite her own struggles, she regularly volunteered at the community center, helping younger disabled children learn to navigate their new realities. She shared her tutoring knowledge freely, often refusing payment from families she knew were struggling financially. Her wheelchair had become a symbol of her determination to remain independent and helpful, regardless of their family's limitations. As the rain continued falling outside her window, Maya made a mental note to check the weather forecast for tomorrow. Danny had an important recital at school, and she wanted to ensure she could attend without wheelchair troubles caused by wet conditions. These small considerations had become second nature to her, always planning ahead, always anticipating challenges, always finding ways to support the people she loved most. The sound of her mother's key in the front door interrupted Maya's thoughts. Linda was home early from her first shift, which usually meant either very good news or very concerning news. Maya positioned her wheelchair near the living room entrance, ready to greet her mother and discover what had brought her home at this unusual hour. This moment, though Maya didn't know it yet, would mark the beginning of a day that would change everything for the Chen family. Sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the most ordinary moments. A mother coming home early, a teenager wondering about tomorrow's weather, and a family continuing to face their challenges with quiet courage and unwavering love for each other. Linda Chen's face bore an expression Maya had learned to read over the years, a mixture of exhaustion and barely contained worry that meant serious news was coming. Her mother set down her purse and medical bag with unusual care, as if buying herself a few extra moments before speaking. "Maya, sweetheart, we need to talk," Linda said, settling onto their worn couch. Danny stopped practicing his violin, sensing the gravity in his mother's voice. "The hospital is cutting hours. My evening shift position has been eliminated." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Her mother's evening shift provided nearly 40% of their income. Without it, they'd lose their apartment within 2 months, maybe sooner. Maya's mind immediately began calculating her tutoring income, their food stamp allocation, Danny's scholarship requirements. The numbers didn't add up to survival. "What are our options?" Maya asked, forcing her voice to remain steady for Danny's sake. Linda rubbed her temples, a gesture Maya recognized from their most difficult financial conversations. "I've applied for additional shifts at Providence, but there's a waiting list. I'm also looking into night shift work at other facilities, but the transportation costs might offset the extra income." Danny had quietly placed his violin in its case, his 13-year-old mind clearly processing the implications. "Should I quit the arts academy?" he asked softly. "Absolutely not," Maya said firmly before her mother could respond. "We'll figure this out." That evening, Maya lay awake long after her family had gone to sleep, staring at the ceiling and running through possibilities. She could increase her tutoring hours, but that would impact her own studies and her college scholarship prospects. They could sell some of their few valuable possessions, but that would only provide temporary relief. The wheelchair itself was worth perhaps $200, but without it, Maya's ability to contribute to their income would disappear entirely. The next morning brought unexpected clarity. Maya woke early, determined to spend the day exploring every possible solution to their financial crisis. She planned to visit the community center's resource coordinator, check with local nonprofits about emergency assistance, and possibly inquire about additional tutoring opportunities at the library. The October air was crisp as Maya navigated her wheelchair down the steep sidewalks toward downtown Portland. The morning commute was lighter than usual, giving her time to think as she waited for the bus. When the number 15 arrived, she noticed the wheelchair lift was making unusual grinding noises, a reminder that even the city's infrastructure was aging and unreliable. Maya's first stop was Riverside Community Center, where she'd volunteered for the past 2 years. The building was a converted warehouse that served as a hub for various social services, including disability support programs, senior services, and youth activities. Mrs. Rodriguez, the center's program coordinator, had become something of a mentor to Maya, often praising her maturity and dedication to helping others. "Maya, perfect timing," Mrs. Rodriguez called out as Maya entered the main activity room. "I wanted to talk with you about something." Before Maya could explain her family's new crisis, Mrs. Rodriguez continued, "We've received a grant to expand our youth mentorship program. It would involve working with newly disabled children and teenagers, helping them adjust to their circumstances. The position comes with a small stipend. Not much, but it might help with your college preparations." Maya's heart leaped at the possibility of additional income, but Mrs. Rodriguez raised her hand. "There's a catch. The program requires mentors to have reliable transportation and the ability to make home visits throughout the metro area. I know the bus system works for you locally, but this would require more flexibility. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." The conversation was interrupted by commotion near the center's entrance. A woman's voice, sharp with frustration, carried across the room. "This is completely unacceptable. How can you people run a program without proper equipment?" Maya turned to see an elegantly dressed woman in her 40s, arguing with the receptionist. Behind her stood a boy who appeared to be around 10 years old, supported by crude wooden crutches that were clearly too large for his small frame. His left leg was in a cast, and Maya could see immediately that he was struggling to maintain his balance. "Mrs. Harrison, I understand your frustration," the receptionist was saying, "but our wheelchair lending program has a waiting list and insurance requirements." "My son needs mobility assistance now, not in 3 weeks," the woman interrupted. "Marcus has been stuck in our hotel room for 4 days because these crutches are impossible for him to manage." Maya watched the boy, Marcus, as his mother argued with the staff. His face showed embarrassment at being the center of attention, mixed with obvious physical discomfort from trying to balance on the ill-fitting crutches. She recognized the expression immediately. She'd worn it herself countless times during her first months in a wheelchair. Without fully thinking through the implications, Maya approached the small group. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I couldn't help but overhear. What kind of mobility assistance does Marcus need?" Mrs. Harrison turned toward Maya, her expression softening slightly when she saw the wheelchair. "He broke his leg in 3 places during a soccer accident last week. The doctors say he'll need mobility assistance for at least 2 months, possibly longer if complications develop. We're visiting from Seattle for his medical treatments, and these crutches are just not working for a 10-year-old. Maya looked at Marcus, who was now leaning heavily against the wall to rest his arms. The crutches were adult-sized, forcing him to hunch his shoulders unnaturally. His arms were already shaking from the effort of supporting his weight. "Marcus," Maya said gently, addressing the boy directly, "have you ever used a wheelchair before?" He shook his head shyly. "The hospital said crutches would be better for my type of injury, but these are really hard to use." Quote. Maya nodded understanding. "Mind if I show you something?" With his permission, she demonstrated how to adjust her wheelchair's footrests, explaining how the positioning could support his injured leg comfortably. Marcus listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about maneuvering and balance. Mrs. Harrison watched this interaction with growing interest. "Are you a volunteer here?" she asked Maya. "Yes, I help with disability support programs. I've been using a wheelchair for 3 years, so I understand some of the challenges Marcus is facing." "The waiting list for a pediatric wheelchair is 3 weeks, Mrs. Harrison said, frustration creeping back into her voice. "Marcus has medical appointments every other day, plus physical therapy sessions. He can't be confined to a hotel room for 3 weeks." Maya glanced at her own wheelchair, then back at Marcus, who was struggling to readjust his grip on the crutches. An idea was forming in her mind, an idea that both terrified and excited her. "What if Marcus could borrow my wheelchair temporarily?" Maya heard herself saying. It's adjustable, and I could teach him how to use it properly." The room went quiet. Mrs. Rodriguez, the receptionist, Mrs. Harrison, and Marcus all stared at Maya in surprise. "That's incredibly generous," Mrs. Harrison said slowly. "But what would you use? How would you get around?" Maya's mind was racing through the implications of her offer. Without her wheelchair, she'd be confined to their apartment. She couldn't get to school, couldn't do her tutoring work, couldn't help with errands or volunteer at the community center. Her family's already precarious financial situation would become catastrophic. But looking at Marcus, seeing his struggle and his mother's desperation, Maya found herself thinking about the lessons her mother had taught her about helping others, even when you had little to give. "I could manage for a couple of weeks," Maya said, though her voice betrayed some uncertainty. "I live in an accessible apartment, and I could do most of my work from home." Mrs. Harrison's eyes filled with tears. "I can't ask you to make that sacrifice for strangers." "You're not asking," Maya replied. "I'm offering." Marcus spoke up for the first time in several minutes. "Would you really let me borrow your wheelchair?" Maya looked into his hopeful eyes and made a decision that would change everything. "Yes, I would." Quote, what followed Maya's offer was a whirlwind of activity that left little time for second-guessing. Mrs. Rodriguez immediately stepped in to coordinate the wheelchair transfer, while Mrs. Harrison made frantic phone calls to Marcus's medical team to confirm that a wheelchair would be suitable for his recovery process. Dr. Patricia Wells, Marcus's orthopedic surgeon, gave enthusiastic approval over the phone. "Actually, a wheelchair might be better for his healing process than those crutches," she told Mrs. Harrison. "It'll take pressure off the fracture sites and reduce his risk of re-injury from falls." Within an hour, Maya found herself in the community center's physical therapy room, teaching Marcus the basics of wheelchair navigation. The boy was a quick learner, his athletic background helping him adapt to the new form of mobility faster than most beginners. "Remember, small movements with the wheels," Maya instructed as Marcus practiced turning. "Don't try to muscle through it. Let the mechanics work for you." Marcus nodded seriously, concentrating on each instruction. "This is actually kind of cool," he admitted, after successfully completing a figure-8 pattern. "It's like learning a new sport." Mrs. Harrison watched the lesson with obvious relief and growing amazement at Maya's generosity. "I still can't believe you're doing this for us," she said quietly to Maya during a break. "We're complete strangers." "My mom always says that helping others is how we find our own strength," Maya replied. "Besides, Marcus reminds me of my little brother Danny. I'd want someone to help him if he were in a similar situation." The wheelchair transfer was completed by early afternoon. Maya watched as Marcus wheeled himself confidently across the community center's main room, his face bright with newfound independence. Mrs. Harrison had tears in her eyes as she thanked Maya repeatedly, promising to take excellent care of the wheelchair and return it in perfect condition. "We're staying at the Hampton Inn downtown," Mrs. Harrison said, handing Maya a business card with her contact information. "Please call if you need anything at all. And I insist on paying for any taxi or rideshare costs you incur while we have your wheelchair." Maya accepted the card graciously, though she had no intention of calling for transportation money. The gesture spoke to Mrs. Harrison's character, but Maya's pride wouldn't allow her to accept what felt like charity. The reality of her sacrifice hit Maya during the bus ride home. Without her wheelchair, she had to ask the driver for assistance getting to a seat, and she realized with growing anxiety that she'd need help getting off at her stop. The independence she'd fought so hard to maintain over the past 3 years was temporarily gone. Arriving at her apartment building presented the first major challenge. The building had no elevator, and Maya's second-floor apartment required navigating a narrow staircase with worn wooden steps. She'd never appreciated how automatically she'd been transferring from her wheelchair to climb those stairs until the wheelchair wasn't there to transfer from. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor from the first floor, happened to be checking her mail when Maya struggled through the building's front door. "Maya, dear, where's your wheelchair?" she asked with immediate concern. "I lent it to someone who needed it more," Maya explained, trying to sound casual while assessing the staircase ahead of her. Without hesitation, Mrs. Patterson offered her arm for support. "Nonsense, you need that chair. But let's get you upstairs first. Then you can tell me what's really going on." The climb to the second floor took nearly 10 minutes and left both Maya and Mrs. Patterson exhausted. Maya's leg muscles, weakened from 3 years of wheelchair use, trembled with the effort of supporting her weight on the stairs. By the time they reached her apartment door, Maya was questioning the wisdom of her generous impulse. Danny was practicing piano when Maya finally made it inside. He'd switched from violin to their old upright piano for afternoon practice. He stopped mid-song when he saw Maya struggling to reach the couch without her usual mobility aid. "Maya, where's your wheelchair?" he asked, echoing Mrs. Patterson's concern. Maya explained the situation while Danny listened with a mixture of admiration and worry. "That was really nice of you," he said. "But how are you going to get to school tomorrow? Or do your tutoring work?" These were the questions Maya had been avoiding since making her impulsive offer. Her tutoring sessions were scheduled at the library every Tuesday and Thursday evening, sessions that provided crucial income for their family. Tomorrow was Thursday, and she had 3 students counting on her help with upcoming midterm exams. "I'll figure something out," Maya said, though she had no idea what that something might be. Linda arrived home that evening to find Maya sitting on the living room floor, her laptop balanced on the coffee table as she attempted to work from an awkward position. The explanation of the day's events took nearly an hour, during which Linda's expressions cycled through surprise, concern, pride, and worry. "Maya, your heart is in the right place," Linda said carefully, "but we can't afford for you to lose your tutoring income right now, not with my hours being cut." "I know, Mom. I'm trying to figure out how to do virtual sessions from home, but our internet connection keeps cutting out, and I can't see the students' work clearly on this small screen." The family spent the evening brainstorming solutions. Danny suggested borrowing a neighbor's tablet for better video quality. Linda proposed asking Mrs. Rodriguez if Maya could use the community center's computers for tutoring sessions. Maya considered rearranging her schedule to work only with students who could come to their apartment. None of these solutions addressed the larger problem, Maya's inability to attend school regularly or maintain her volunteer commitments. Her carefully constructed independence, built over 3 years of learning to navigate the world from a wheelchair, had been dismantled in a single afternoon of generosity. That night, Maya lay in bed questioning whether she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd risked her family's financial stability and her own educational goals to help strangers who would return to Seattle once Marcus healed. The rational part of her mind argued that she should call Mrs. Harrison in the morning and ask for the wheelchair back. But every time she imagined making that call, she pictured Marcus's face lighting up when he'd successfully navigated the community center in the wheelchair. She thought about Mrs. Harrison's tears of relief and gratitude. Most importantly, she remembered her mother's lessons about finding strength through helping others, especially when you had little to give. The next morning brought fresh challenges. Maya's usual morning routine of showering and getting dressed took twice as long without her wheelchair for support and transportation between rooms. Getting to the kitchen for breakfast required careful navigation along walls and furniture. Every simple task had become a complex undertaking. Danny, observing his sister's struggles, made an unexpected announcement at breakfast. "I'm going to walk with you to your tutoring session tonight," he said. "I can carry your laptop and books and help you get there safely." "Danny, that's sweet, but your violin lesson is tonight," Maya protested. "I can miss one lesson." Besides, Mr. Peterson always says that music is about supporting each other, not just individual performance. Linda looked at her children with obvious pride mixed with concern. "You two are remarkable," she said, "but we need to think practically about this situation. Maya, maybe it's time to call Mrs. Harrison and explain that you need your wheelchair back." Maya was about to agree when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Mrs. Harrison's number, and Maya's heart sank, thinking the woman was calling to return the wheelchair due to some problem with Marcus. "Maya, I hope I'm not calling too early." Mrs. Harrison's voice sounded excited rather than troubled. "I wanted to give you an update on Marcus, and I have some questions about his care that I hoped you could help with." Maya listened as Mrs. Harrison described Marcus's successful first night with the wheelchair, his improved mood, and his excitement about being able to attend his physical therapy session independently. Then Mrs. Harrison's tone became more serious. "Maya, I've been thinking about your sacrifice all night. Marcus told me you mentioned having a brother who plays music, and that your family has been dealing with some financial challenges. I'd like to discuss how we might be able to help during the time we're borrowing your wheelchair." Maya's pride immediately bristled. "Mrs. Harrison, I didn't lend you the wheelchair expecting anything in return. I know you didn't, which makes your generosity even more remarkable. But please, let me explain what I have in mind. Mrs. Harrison's voice carried a warmth that Maya hadn't expected from their brief encounter the day before. Maya, I want to be completely transparent with you about who I am and why this situation means so much to me. Maya settled into the most comfortable position she could manage on the couch, curious about the direction this conversation was taking. My husband is Jonathan Harrison. He's the CEO of Harrison Technologies, a software development company based in Seattle. We're not just visiting Portland for Marcus's medical care. Jonathan grew up here, and we have deep connections to this community. Maya's breath caught. Harrison Technologies was a name she recognized from news articles about successful Pacific Northwest companies. She'd even seen their logo on some of the computers at Roosevelt High School. The reason I'm telling you this, Mrs. Harrison continued, is because Jonathan and I have been looking for ways to give back to Portland, particularly in supporting young people who demonstrate exceptional character and potential. What you did yesterday, sacrificing your own mobility to help a stranger, is exactly the kind of remarkable spirit we want to support. Maya felt overwhelmed by the implications of what she was hearing. Mrs. Harrison, I appreciate your kindness, but I didn't help Marcus expecting any reward. I know you didn't, and that's precisely why you deserve support. Maya, would you be willing to meet with my husband and me this afternoon? We'd like to discuss how we can assist your family during the time we're borrowing your wheelchair, and potentially beyond that. After much internal debate, Maya agreed to the meeting. Mrs. Harrison arranged for a car service to bring Maya to their hotel, ensuring she wouldn't have to navigate public transportation without her wheelchair. The ride to the downtown Hampton Inn gave Maya time to process the morning's unexpected developments. She'd gone from questioning her decision to help Marcus to potentially meeting with a tech company CEO who wanted to help her family. The situation felt surreal, like something from one of the inspirational stories she sometimes read online. Jonathan Harrison was not what Maya had expected. Instead of the stern, intimidating executive she'd imagined, she found a man in his early 50s with kind eyes and a genuine smile. He greeted Maya in the hotel lobby with the same warmth his wife had shown, immediately putting her at ease. Maya, thank you for agreeing to meet with us, he said as they settled into a quiet corner of the hotel's cafe. Catherine has told me about your incredible generosity with Marcus, and I wanted to meet the young woman who made such an impression on my family. Marcus joined them a few minutes later, confidently navigating his way across the cafe in Maya's wheelchair. His transformation from the struggling boy on crutches was remarkable. He moved with growing confidence and obvious relief at his newfound mobility. Maya, look! Marcus called out excitedly. I can do wheelies now! He demonstrated a small wheelie that made his parents laugh nervously. Marcus, please be careful with Maya's wheelchair, Catherine warned, but Maya was delighted to see the boy's enthusiasm. That's excellent technique, Maya praised. You're learning faster than most people do. Just remember to always check your surroundings before attempting tricks. Jonathan watched this interaction with obvious interest. Maya, Catherine mentioned that you volunteer with disabled youth at the community center. Is that work you're passionate about? Maya found herself opening up about her experiences, her dreams of studying biomedical engineering, and her desire to develop better assistive technologies. She spoke about the challenges facing disabled young people, particularly those from low-income families who couldn't afford high-quality equipment or specialized services. The waiting list at Riverside Community Center is 3 weeks for basic wheelchair loans, Maya explained. But for families visiting from out of town or people dealing with temporary injuries, 3 weeks might as well be 3 months. There's such a gap between what people need and what's available. Jonathan and Catherine exchanged meaningful glances as Maya spoke. What if that gap could be bridged? Jonathan asked. What would an ideal support system look like? Maya's mind raced with possibilities. Well, ideally there would be a faster response system for emergency mobility needs. Maybe a network of loaner equipment that could be accessed quickly. And definitely more support for families dealing with the financial impact of disability. Not just medical costs, but all the hidden expenses like transportation, equipment maintenance, accessibility modifications. Those are exactly the kinds of systemic issues we've been thinking about addressing, Catherine said. Jonathan, should we tell her about the foundation idea? Jonathan nodded. Maya, we've been in the early stages of planning a foundation focused on disability support and assistive technology development. What happened yesterday? Your willingness to help Marcus, combined with the clear gaps in services that made your help necessary, has crystallized our thinking about what this foundation should prioritize. Maya listened in amazement as Jonathan outlined their vision, a foundation that would provide emergency mobility equipment loans, fund assistive technology research, and offer scholarships for students pursuing careers in disability-related fields. "We'd like you to be involved in this foundation from the beginning," Catherine said, "not just as a beneficiary, but as an advisor. Your perspective as someone who's lived with disability and understands the real-world challenges would be invaluable in shaping our programs." The conversation continued for over 2 hours, during which Maya learned more about the Harrison family's background and motivations. Jonathan's younger brother had been born with cerebral palsy and had faced many of the same challenges Maya described. Though his brother had passed away several years earlier, his experiences had deeply influenced Jonathan's desire to improve systems and support for disabled individuals. "My brother David would have loved you," Jonathan told Maya. "He had the same combination of independence and compassion that you've shown. He always said that the best advocates for disabled people are those who understand the challenges firsthand but refuse to be limited by them." As the meeting wound down, Catherine returned to the practical matters at hand. "Maya, we want to ensure that your generosity doesn't create hardship for your family. We'd like to arrange for transportation to and from school, cover any income you lose from being unable to do your tutoring work, and provide whatever other support you need while Marcus is using your wheelchair." Maya's initial instinct was to refuse such comprehensive help, but she thought about her mother's cut hours, Danny's music expenses, and their mounting bills. Sometimes accepting help was itself an act of courage. "There is one thing," Maya said hesitantly. "My brother Danny is incredibly talented musically, but we've been struggling to afford his opportunities at Lincoln Arts Academy. If there were some way to ensure he could continue his education there—" "Consider it done," Jonathan said immediately. "In fact, we'd like to meet Danny. Catherine plays piano, and we'd love to hear him perform." The meeting concluded with plans for the Harrison family to visit Maya's home that evening. They wanted to meet Linda and Danny, see Maya's living situation firsthand, and discuss how they could provide both immediate assistance and longer-term support. As Maya rode back to her apartment in the Harrisons' arranged car service, she reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken in just 48 hours. Her impulsive act of kindness had not only helped Marcus but had connected her family to people who shared their values and wanted to support their dreams. But even more significant than the potential financial assistance was the validation of her belief that helping others, even at personal cost, was the right thing to do. Her mother's lessons about finding strength through generosity had proven true in ways Maya never could have imagined. The afternoon had also clarified Maya's future goals. Hearing Jonathan and Catherine discuss systemic solutions to disability-related challenges had inspired her to think beyond her individual aspirations. She began to envision herself not just as a future biomedical engineer, but as an advocate and leader in creating better support systems for disabled individuals and their families. When Maya arrived home, she found Danny practicing violin with unusual intensity. He'd been working on a particularly challenging piece by Bach, and his playing had reached a new level of emotional depth. As she listened to her brother's music filling their small apartment, Maya realized that some of the most beautiful things in life came from perseverance through difficulty. Linda would be home from work in an hour, and Maya needed to prepare her mother for the evening's visit from the Harrison family. But first, she wanted to simply sit and appreciate this moment of transition. From uncertainty to hope, from struggle to possibility, from a simple act of kindness to the beginning of something much larger than she'd ever imagined. Linda Chen's reaction to Maya's news about the Harrison family's visit was a mixture of disbelief, anxiety, and protective concern. She stood in their small kitchen, still wearing her nursing scrubs from the day shift, processing the information while mechanically organizing their dinner preparations. "Maya, I need you to understand something," Linda said carefully, her voice carrying the weight of years spent protecting her children from disappointment. "Rich people sometimes make promises they don't keep. I don't want you or Danny getting your hopes up, only to be hurt when they lose interest in helping us." Maya understood her mother's caution. Linda had learned to be wary of situations that seemed too good to be true, having been let down by Maya's father's promises and various social service programs that offered help but delivered bureaucratic obstacles instead. "Mom, I felt the same way at first," Maya replied. "But there's something genuine about the Harrisons. The way they talk about their foundation isn't just charity. They want to create real systemic change. And Mrs. Harrison specifically mentioned that they're looking for authentic partnerships, not just people to write checks to. Danny had been listening from the living room while practicing scales on his violin. "Should I change into something nicer?" he asked, looking down at his worn jeans and school t-shirt. "You look fine, sweetheart," Linda assured him, though Maya noticed her mother glancing around their apartment with fresh eyes, seeing it as the Harrisons would. The cramped space, secondhand furniture, and obvious signs of financial struggle suddenly felt more pronounced when anticipating visitors who lived in a completely different economic reality. The Harrison family arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, but their approach immediately set a different tone than Maya had expected. Instead of the formal delegation she'd imagined, Jonathan Harrison carried a pizza box, Catherine brought a bouquet of flowers from a local grocery store, and Marcus wheeled himself confidently through the door with a backpack full of board games. "We hope we're not imposing," Catherine said warmly to Linda. "We brought dinner so you wouldn't have to worry about cooking after your work shift." Jonathan's demeanor was equally casual and respectful. "Mrs. Chen, thank you for welcoming us into your home. Maya has told us so much about your family, and we're honored to meet you." Linda's defensive posture began to soften as the Harrisons proved to be genuinely down-to-earth, despite their wealth. Jonathan asked thoughtful questions about her work at the hospital, showing real interest in the challenges facing healthcare workers. Catherine complimented the family photos on their walls, and seemed genuinely moved by the picture of Danny at his first violin recital. Marcus, meanwhile, had immediately bonded with Danny over their shared love of strategy games. "Do you play chess?" Marcus asked, producing a travel set from his backpack. "My dad taught me, but I need to practice against someone closer to my age." As the two boys set up the chessboard, Maya watched her family's dynamics shift in ways she hadn't anticipated. Linda was actually laughing at one of Jonathan's stories about his early days building his company from a garage. Danny was patiently explaining chess strategies to Marcus, while demonstrating remarkable maturity for a 13-year-old. The apartment, which had felt cramped and inadequate an hour earlier, now felt warm and welcoming. The conversation during dinner revealed unexpected common ground between the two families. Jonathan had grown up in a working-class family in Portland's outer neighborhoods, and his success hadn't erased his understanding of financial struggle. Catherine had been a social worker before Jonathan's company became profitable, and she spoke knowledgeably about the systemic barriers facing families like the Chens. "The thing that struck me most about Maya's action yesterday," Catherine said to Linda, "is that she made a significant personal sacrifice to help strangers, without any expectation of recognition or reward. That kind of character isn't learned from books, it's modeled by family." Linda's eyes glistened at the compliment. "Maya has always had a generous heart. Sometimes I worry that she gives too much of herself." "I understand that concern," Jonathan replied, "but I think Maya's instincts are exactly right. The world needs more people who act from genuine compassion, especially people who understand struggle firsthand." After dinner, the conversation turned to more practical matters. Jonathan outlined his company's foundation plans in greater detail, explaining how Maya's experience and insights would help shape their programs. But it was Catherine who addressed the immediate family concerns. "We've given this considerable thought," Catherine said to Linda. "We'd like to establish an educational fund for both Maya and Danny, covering not just tuition but also living expenses so they can focus on their studies without financial stress. For Maya, this would include her undergraduate education and potentially graduate school in biomedical engineering. For Danny, it would ensure he can continue at Lincoln Arts Academy and pursue whatever musical opportunities emerge." Linda's composure finally cracked. That's incredibly generous, but I don't know how we could ever repay such kindness." "You don't repay it," Jonathan said gently. "You pay it forward. Maya is already doing that through her volunteer work and her plans to improve assistive technology. Danny will do it through his music and whatever path he chooses. You're doing it every day through your work caring for patients at the hospital." Quote. Marcus looked up from the chess game he was winning against Danny. "Maya, when I get better, I want to volunteer at that community center too. I want to help other kids who get hurt, like I did." The evening's most powerful moment came when Catherine asked Danny to play something on his violin. He chose the Bach piece he'd been practicing, and the small apartment filled with music that transformed the space entirely. Jonathan and Catherine listened with obvious emotion, while Marcus sat quietly in Maya's wheelchair, completely absorbed by the performance. When Danny finished, there was a moment of reverent silence before Catherine spoke. That was extraordinary. Danny, you have a rare gift, and we want to make sure you have every opportunity to develop it. Actually, Jonathan added, I have a colleague whose daughter attends Juilliard's pre-college program. If you're interested, I could arrange for you to audition for some prestigious summer programs that might accelerate your musical development. The rest of the evening was spent discussing logistics and timelines. The Harrisons would ensure Maya had reliable transportation to school and her tutoring sessions while Marcus used her wheelchair. They would cover all of Danny's educational expenses immediately and begin setting up the longer-term educational funds for both children. But beyond the financial support, Maya sensed that something deeper was happening. The Harrison family wasn't just providing charity. They were creating genuine relationships. Marcus was already talking about staying in touch with Danny. After returning to Seattle, Catherine had exchanged contact information with Linda and was discussing ways they could collaborate on healthcare-related foundation initiatives. As the evening wound down, Jonathan pulled Maya aside for a private conversation. Maya, I want you to understand that what we're offering isn't contingent on your continued involvement with our foundation. Your family's support is guaranteed regardless of what you decide about working with us. But I hope you will consider it seriously, he continued. You have insights and perspectives that could help us create programs that actually address real needs, rather than what we think people need. Your voice could help ensure our foundation makes meaningful differences in people's lives. Quote, Maya looked around the room, at her mother chatting comfortably with Catherine, at Danny teaching Marcus a new chess strategy, at the pizza boxes and board games that had transformed their formal meeting into a family gathering. She realized that the most remarkable aspect of the evening wasn't the financial promises, but the recognition that her act of kindness had connected two families who shared fundamental values despite their different circumstances. Mr. Harrison, Maya said, I'm honored by your offer, and I'd like to be involved in whatever way I can help, but I have one condition. Jonathan raised an eyebrow curiously. I want Marcus to be involved too when he's older. What he experienced yesterday, needing help and receiving it from a stranger, gave him insights that adults often lack. His perspective could be valuable in making sure your foundation serves the people who need it most. Jonathan smiled broadly. Maya, that's exactly the kind of thinking that proves you're the right person for this role. As the Harrison family prepared to leave, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with anticipation. Her simple act of lending her wheelchair to help a stranger had opened doors she never could have imagined, but more importantly, it had confirmed her belief that compassion and generosity created connections that transcended economic boundaries. The real transformation wasn't in her family's financial prospects, though those had dramatically improved. The real change was in their understanding of their own potential to make meaningful differences in the world. 6 weeks after Maya had offered her wheelchair to a stranger, she stood in the grand ballroom of the Portland Art Museum, watching hundreds of people gather for the official launch of the Harrison Foundation for Accessibility and Innovation. The venue buzzed with conversations between disability advocates, tech entrepreneurs, medical professionals, and community leaders, all brought together by a foundation that had grown from a simple act of kindness. Maya, now wearing an elegant navy dress that Catherine Harrison had helped her select, moved confidently through the crowd in her returned wheelchair. Marcus had transitioned back to walking the week before, and the emotional ceremony of returning the chair had been covered by local media as a symbol of community support and recovery. Maya Chen, there you are, called Drive, Rebecca Martinez, the foundation's newly appointed executive director. The mayor wants to meet you before his remarks, and we have 3 reporters asking for interviews about your role in inspiring the foundation. The attention still felt surreal to Maya. In just 6 weeks, she'd gone from a struggling high school student to a recognized voice in disability advocacy. Her acceptance letter to Stanford's biomedical engineering program sat framed on her desk at home, alongside scholarship notifications from the Harrison Foundation that would cover not just her education, but also fund her research into affordable assistive technologies. Across the ballroom, Danny performed with a string quartet composed of students from Lincoln Arts Academy. His violin soared above the elegant classical arrangement, and Maya noticed several audience members stopping their conversations to listen. The Harrison Foundation had already committed to funding a full scholarship program for talented students from low-income families, with Danny serving as the first recipient and youth ambassador. "Maya, this is incredible," said Mrs. Rodriguez, who had received a significant grant to expand the Bridge Connections program throughout Oregon. "6 months ago, we were struggling to maintain basic services. Now we're launching innovative programs that other states want to replicate." The evening's program began with Mayor Catherine Williams addressing the crowd. "Tonight celebrates more than a new foundation," she announced. "We're celebrating the power of individual compassion to create systemic change. Maya Chen's decision to help a stranger has grown into an initiative that will improve accessibility and opportunity for thousands of people." Jonathan Harrison took the stage next, but his speech focused not on corporate philanthropy but on partnership and community wisdom. The Harrison Foundation exists because a 15-year-old girl taught us that genuine leadership comes from those who understand struggle firsthand. Maya's insights have shaped every program we're launching tonight. When Maya was invited to speak, she approached the podium with confidence that would have been unimaginable 6 weeks earlier. Looking out at the audience, she saw Marcus sitting with his parents in the front row, beaming with pride. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, sat nearby wearing her finest dress. Even Professor Chen from the University of Washington had traveled from Seattle to attend. 6 weeks ago, I made what seemed like a small decision," Maya began. "I saw someone who needed help, and I had something that could help him. What I've learned since then is that kindness isn't just about individual moments. It's about building communities where helping each other becomes natural and sustained." She spoke about the importance of including disabled voices in designing solutions, about the power of peer support, and about her vision for a future where accessibility was built into systems from the beginning, rather than added as an afterthought. "Marcus borrowed my wheelchair for 6 weeks," Maya concluded, "but what we've built together will create mobility and opportunity for generations to come." The applause was thunderous, but Maya's attention was drawn to her mother in the audience. Linda Chen, now enrolled in her nursing management program and working reasonable hours, looked radiant with pride and possibility. The transformation in their family's circumstances had been remarkable, but the transformation in their sense of purpose and potential was even more profound. As the evening wound down, Maya found herself surrounded by foundation board members, university representatives, and disability advocates eager to collaborate on future projects. Marcus, now walking confidently without assistance, approached with a special announcement. "Maya, my school in Seattle wants to start an accessibility club," he said excitedly. "They want you to help us launch it through a video call next month. And my dad's company is implementing all the accessibility improvements we discussed. They're becoming a model for other tech companies." The final moment of the evening came when Catherine Harrison presented Maya with a small gift, a photo album documenting the past 6 weeks. The images told the story of transformation. Maya teaching Marcus to use the wheelchair, the Harrison family's first dinner at the Chen apartment, Danny performing at the Foundation's planning meetings, Maya speaking at the University of Washington, and finally, the celebration of Marcus returning to walking. "This foundation will impact thousands of lives," Catherine said softly, "but it all started with one person choosing compassion over convenience. Thank you for showing us what true leadership looks like." As Maya's family prepared to leave the gala, she paused to look back at the ballroom. The space that had hosted tonight's celebration would soon be converted into the Foundation's first accessibility resource center, offering equipment loans, peer support programs, and advocacy training. Walking to their car, a reliable vehicle the Foundation had provided to replace Linda's aging sedan, Maya reflected on how her simple act of kindness had created ripples far beyond anything she could have imagined. Marcus was walking again, but he was also becoming a disability advocate. Her family's financial struggles were over, but more importantly, they'd discovered their power to create positive change in their community. The wheelchair that had once represented Maya's limitation had become a symbol of connection, generosity, and the incredible things that could happen when people chose to help each other. As they drove through Portland's evening streets, Maya knew that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The first chapter of a life dedicated to building a more accessible and compassionate world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.